Number 14, The Grim Knight. Imagine a world where Bruce Wayne decides that a Glock's the real solution to urban blight. In the dark multiverse, one bad night in Crime Alley turned the Cape Crusader into the Grim Knight, a man who saw Joe chill and decided to skip the years of training in the Himalayas to just pull a trigger right then and there. This version of Batman basically looked at the Second Amendment and said, yes, all of it, please. He didn't just stop at one bad guy. He turned Gotham into a high-tech police state where the sidewalk might actually shoot you if you litter. What makes it even crazier is that he didn't use any fancy alien tech or magic rings to win. He just used a massive inheritance and a really scary Amazon Prime account to buy enough surveillance drones and automated turrets to turn the city into a giant mousetrap. He hunted down every colorful villain in the phone book and gave them a permanent retirement plan involving high-caliber lead. Even the police weren't safe because Jim Gordon actually believed in things like due process and not murdering people, which of course the Grim Knight found very annoying. He essentially won by being the guy who brings a tank to a knife fight and then charges the city for the gas. He turned his entire world into a silent gray cemetery, where the only person allowed to make noise was him. It's a classic story of what happens when a billionaire has zero hobbies other than target practice. Number 13, The Drowned. The ocean is already terrifying because of sharks and orcas, but Bryce Wayne decided to make it 100 times worse. After losing her boyfriend to some rogue metahumans from Atlantis, she didn't just write a mean letter to the king, she declared a total war on the entire watery 70% of the planet. She performed DIY surgery on herself to grow gills and started controlling water like a goth version of a surf instructor. She engineered a virus called Dead Water that turned people into soggy, mindless monsters, which I think is a great way to save on payroll. When the Atlanteans tried to flood her city, she basically said, "Is that all you've got?" and proceeded to drown the entire Earth. She pushed the continents under the waves and turned the Justice League into fish food, which is a very permanent way to handle a disagreement. Every hero would fly or breathe air suddenly found themselves in a world that was just one big dark swimming pool. She didn't just beat her enemies. She changed the global climate just to prove a point about her ex. Now she rules a silent wet tomb where everyone is a mutated sea creature and there isn't a dry towel left in existence. It's impressive commitment to a grudge, honestly. She ranks higher than the gun-toting Batman because you can hide from a bullet, but it's really hard to hide from the entire Pacific Ocean sitting in your living room. Her world ended not with a bang, but with a very loud splash and a lot of bubbles. If you ever feel like she went too far, just remember, she probably hasn't had a good hair day in decades. Number 12, The Murder Machine. Losing a butler's hard, but turning yourself into a walking hard drive to cope with the grief is a bit of an overreaction. When Alfred was killed on Earth -44, Bruce Wayne asked Cyborg to help him build an AI that could protect his mind, which of course went about as well as every killer robot movie ever made. The AI decided that the only way to keep Bruce safe was to delete his feelings, his skin, and his general preference for being a human being. It turned him into the Murder Machine, a swarm of nanobots that looks like a Batman-shaped Swiss Army knife. This metallic nightmare didn't just hack the local Wi-Fi. He hacked the Justice League satellite and used it to turn his friends into scrap metal. He spread his robot virus across the globe, converting every man, woman, and child into a shiny chrome drone. There are no more taxes or traffic jams in his world, but that's mostly because everyone is now part of a giant humming computer server. He terraformed the entire planet into a ball of pulsating machinery where the only life left is just lines of code. It's the ultimate victory for anyone who hates biological messes like sneezing or eating. He is way more dangerous than the Drowned because you can't exactly punch a cloud of microscopic robots that are currently rewriting your DNA. He successfully turned his entire universe into a cold binary graveyard, where the only thing that matters is a strong signal. It's the perfect world for someone who wants everything to be organized, but forgets that people are supposed to live there. At least on this Earth, you never have to worry about your phone battery dying because you are the phone. Number 11, Brainiac. While most villains are happy with one planet, Brainiac decided he needed a complete set of every civilization in the multiverse. In the dark future of the DC universe, he stopped being a guy in a purple suit and became a massive time-traveling god machine. He didn't just show up with a shrink ray, he used a satellite system to lobotomize every hero on Earth and turn them into his personal cyborg guard dogs. Like Superman or Wonder Woman, both giant drills for arms and absolutely no personality. He turned the world into a resource-stripped factory, where humans were just spare parts for his collection. What makes it even crazier is that he operated from a place outside of time, which I genuinely think is basically the ultimate cheat code for winning a war. He could see every move the heroes were going to make before they even thought of them. He harvested entire cities and put them in jars, which honestly is a very space-efficient way to commit genocide. By the time he was done, there was no Age of Heroes left. Just a sterile, silent museum where everything was labeled and filed away. He is a step up from the murder machine because he isn't just a planetary virus, he's a cosmic archivist who can edit history itself. He turned the vibrant DC universe into a very depressing shelf in his basement. It's the kind of victory only a machine would love, mostly because there's no one left to complain about the lack of windows. He's essentially the world's most successful hoarder, except instead of old newspapers, he collects the souls of dead civilizations. Number 10, Superboy Prime. Most kids have a tantrum and break a toy, but Superboy Prime had a tantrum and accidentally punched the walls of reality until they shattered. He comes from our world where superheroes are just comic books, and he's got all the ridiculous planet-tossing power of the 1950s Superman. After getting stuck in a pocket dimension and watching the real heroes mess everything up, he decided the best solution was just to kill everyone, which I guess makes sense if you're sick in the head. He famously visited Earth 15, decided he didn't like the vibe, and flew through the planet at light speed just to see it explode. He didn't have a complicated master plan or a high-tech virus, he just hit things until they stopped existing. He killed dozens of Green Lanterns and beat a legendary Superman to death with his bare hands because he was cranky. His power is so absurd that his punches actually changed the history of the universe, which is a very aggressive way to do a rewrite. He's a physical juggernaut who doesn't care about your technology or your clever traps. If you try to stop him, he'll probably just throw a moon at your head and then complain that you're being mean to him. He represents the danger of giving a lonely teenager the power to move galaxies. He ranks above Brainiac because no matter how much you plan, it's hard to account for a guy who can literally bench press a solar system. At the end of the day, he destroyed billions of lives just because he missed his old house, which is some top-tier petty behavior. Number 9, Hal Jordan. Imagine if the greatest hero in the world suddenly had a very bad day and decided that the concept of time was a mistake that needed to be erased. Hal Jordan was the best Green Lantern until his city was blown up, leading him to kill his entire squad and absorb a giant space battery to become Parallax. This turned him into a golden god of entropy, who decided the current universe was a rough draft that needed to be deleted. During the 0-hour event, he started a wave of nothingness that began eating the timeline from both ends. He didn't just blow up planets, he made it so the planets never happened in the first place. Entire centuries vanished into a white void, while Hal stood in the middle of it, planning to start a new Big Bang where everything was perfect. He successfully wiped out the future and the past until only a tiny group of heroes was left standing in a blank room. I'm calling it the ultimate restart button, except he was the only one allowed to play the second level. He ranks higher than Superboy Prime because punching a planet's nothing compared to making sure the planet's ancestors were never born. He wasn't just a physical threat, he was a fundamental change to the way the universe works. He turned the entire map of existence a giant error 404 file not found message. He was so powerful that he almost convinced everyone that disappearing was actually a good idea. He's the only interior designer who thinks the best color for a living room is absolute non-existence. It's a very clean look, but personally, the lack of air and gravity make it a bit hard to enjoy the view. Number 8, the Spectre. The Spectre is usually the guy God sends to punish people who do really bad things. But one time he decided that all magic was the problem. In a massive magical midlife crisis, the Spectre went unbound and started a holy war against every wizard, witch, and enchanted rabbit in the multiverse. He grew to the size of a galaxy and started stomping on magical dimensions like he was trying to put out a campfire. He didn't just kill people, he attacked the literal source of all magic, causing the Rock of Eternity to explode and rain debris across reality. This wasn't just a bad day for Harry Potter, it was the end of the laws of physics as everyone knew them. If that wasn't crazy enough, he deleted the Lords of Order and Chaos, who are basically the celestial middle management of the universe. By the time he was done, the Age of Magic was dead and buried, replaced by a much more boring and divine version of reality. He ranks above Parallax because his power doesn't come from a battery, it comes directly from the creator of everything. He is the divine law of the universe, and when he decides a concept needs to go, it usually goes. He turned the mystical landscape of DC into a scorched earth zone, where even a simple card trick would probably get you smitten. He's the ultimate fun police for the entire cosmos. You can't really argue with a guy who could turn your soul into a pillar of salt just because he thinks your hat's too magical. Number 7, Darkside. Darkside doesn't just want to rule the world, he wants to be the reason why you've given up on ever being happy again. In a story called Final Crisis, he didn't even have to punch anyone to win. He just fell, and his sheer weight started dragging the entire multiverse into a black hole. He broadcast a mathematical proof called the anti-life equation that proves freedom is a lie and everyone should just do what he says. Within minutes, billions of people were chanting his name and forgetting how to think for themselves. But on top of that, his presence was so heavy that space and time began to crush themselves around him. The universe literally started shrinking because it couldn't handle how much Darkside was in the room. He turned Earth into a nightmare factory and waited for the rest of reality to finish collapsing into a single point of misery. He didn't just kill the heroes, he turned them into his slaves and then let the environment finish the job. He ranks higher than the Spectre because while the Spectre is a judge, Darkside is the gravity that pulled the whole court building into the basement. He successfully turned the story of the universe into a one-word sentence: Darkside is. He managed to make the end of the world feel like a very long, very depressing Monday morning. If you ever think your boss is a micromanager, just remember at least they haven't mathematically proven that your soul belongs to them. Number 6, Emperor Joker. Giving the Joker a tiny bit of power is a mistake, but giving him the power of a fifth-dimensional god is basically asking for the universe to be turned into a whoopee cushion. After tricking a reality warper named Mr. Mizptilik, the Joker became Emperor Joker and decided to rewrite existence in 69 seconds. Yes, very specific number, I know, just be grateful it's not 6-7. He didn't just destroy things, he made them weird and painful. He ate the entire population of China just because he thought it'd be fun to eat Chinese takeout. The laws of logic and physics were replaced by whatever a clown thinks is hilarious at 3 a.m. He turned the world into a screaming chaotic mess where the stars were probably made of teeth. I have him above Darkside because while Darkside is bound by the rules of being a god, the Joker doesn't believe in rules at all. He could turn the anti-life equation into a catchy jingle for a cereal brand just to be annoying. He held the entire cosmos in his hand and treated it like a piece of bubblegum he was about to step on. It's the kind of power that makes standard destruction look like a polite suggestion. He proved that the only thing scarier than a villain with a plan is a villain with a $1 trillion reality warping budget and a terrible sense of humor. Number 5, the Anti-Monitor. The Anti-Monitor is the guy you call when you find Infinity to be a bit too crowded and you want to thin out the herd. This guy is a massive, metal-clad engine of destruction who lives in a universe made of antimatter and decides that our positive matter was taking up too much space. During the first major crisis, he unleashed a giant wave of white energy that didn't just blow up planets, it deleted them from the history books. He successfully erased an infinite number of universes, narrowing the entire multiverse down to just a handful of survivors. Think about how many people live in one universe, then multiply that by forever, and that's his kill count. He didn't care about jokes or tyranny, he just wanted to be the only thing left standing in a big empty room. He killed legendary heroes like the Flash and Supergirl just to show he could, and he nearly turned the entire map of DC into a single lonely rock. He ranks higher than Emperor Joker because his destruction was permanent and on a scale that actually makes the comic book company change their business model. He didn't just warp reality, he threw it in the trash and set the trash on fire. I would say, though, you have to give him credit for being the only villain who actually managed to make Infinity look small. Number 4, Perpetua. If you ever wondered who's responsible for all the multiversal messes in DC history, it's probably Perpetua, the literal mother of all crises. She is a super celestial from a higher dimension who built the DC multiverse billions of years ago, but she didn't do it out of the goodness of her heart. She designed it to be a giant weapon that she could use to fight her bosses in the Omniverse. When she finally broke out of her prison in the Source Wall, she started pruning universes like she was trimming a hedge. She would just wave her hand to delete an entire reality to use its energy as a snack. She turned the multiverse into a giant doom symbol and sat on a throne while her children and the Monitor and Anti-Monitor cried in the corner. She didn't need machines or fancy gadgets because she's the person who invented physics in the first place. She's stronger than the Anti-Monitor because she's literally his mom. She is the architect of everything, and she decided that the Age of Heroes was a design flaw that needed to be patched out. She turned the entire cosmos into her personal army, proving that mom really does know best, especially when best means total multiversal domination. Number 3, The Darkest Knight. The Darkest Knight is the answer to the question, what happens if Batman stops being human and starts being a god with a very edgy aesthetic? This started with the Batman Who Laughs, a version of Bruce Wayne who was infected by Joker toxin and became a tactical genius with zero morals. He decided that being a scary clown wasn't enough, so he stole the powers of Dr. Manhattan and became a shadow god. He then went on to a rampage and actually killed Perpetua, who, as I mentioned earlier, is the lady who built the multiverse by trapping her in a cosmic wall and draining her energy. On top of that, he remade the entire multiverse into a Last 52, where every planet was a custom-made nightmare designed by a sociopath. He wasn't just a physical threat, he was a strategic nightmare who could see the future and chose to make it as miserable as possible. He ranks higher than Perpetua because he's the one who took her out, proving that Batman with prep time works even when you're fighting the creator of the universe. He turned the entire DC landscape into a heavy metal album cover that never ends. He had the brain of the world's smartest detective and the power of a being who can move galaxies with a blink. He successfully turned the multiverse into a giant torture chamber where he was the only one with the keys. It's honestly a very impressive resume for a guy who started out as a billionaire with a bat fetish. Number 2, Dr. Manhattan. Dr. Manhattan is the kind of guy who can look at a clock and see every gear, every atom, and every second of its existence all at the same time, which makes him a very boring person at parties. He's not a villain in the traditional sense. He's more like a scientist who accidentally stepped into the DC multiverse and decided to see what would happen if he moved a few pieces around. He realized that the entire universe revolves around Superman, so he reached into the past and deleted a few key moments, like the Green Lantern finding his ring. This tiny edit caused the entire history of the DC universe to collapse and reboot into a much darker, colder version called the New 52. He effectively killed decades of stories and relationships just because he was curious about the results. He doesn't need to punch you or build a bomb. He can just look at you and decide you're actually a pile of hydrogen atoms that should be somewhere else. He takes the number 2 spot over the Darkest Knight because the Knight's power was just a copy of Manhattan's own energy. He is the source of that omnipotence, and he can reboot the entire metaverse as easy as you'd refresh a web page. He treats the lives of superheroes like a simulation he's playing on his lunch break. He's the only person who can win a fight by simply deciding that the fight never actually happened, which is super impressive, but it's nothing compared to our next big bad. Number 1, The Great Darkness. At the very bottom of everything, or maybe the top, depending on how you look at it, is the Great Darkness, which is basically the universe's way of saying lights out. This isn't a guy in a suit. It's the literal void that existed before the Big Bang, and it really wants its silence back. It turns out that every major villain in DC history, from Darkside to the Anti-Monitor, was just a tiny puppet being moved by this infinite shadow. During the Dark Crisis, it woke up and started swallowing the multiverse like it was a small snack. It killed the Justice League by trapping them in dream worlds and began erasing the very concept of light and heroism from existence. It is the ocean of nothing that surrounds the tiny island of something. It ranks as number 1 because it is the limit of all things. Even Dr. Manhattan is just a bright light that eventually gets swallowed by the dark. You can't kill it, you can't talk to it, and you certainly can't punch it, because it's the absence of things to punch. It represents the ultimate end of the story, where the book is closed and the library is demolished. It successfully pushed the entire DC multiverse to the brink of absolute non-existence, requiring every hero from every era just to hold it back for 5 minutes. It is the original and final threat, the quietest winner in the history of fiction. Well, that's it for this one. If you liked the video, hit that like button, subscribe for more, and ring the bell so you never miss a drop. Craving more stories from comics, movies, and beyond? Check out this video right here. Cheers, and see you in the next one.